Welcome back to Primary Source China Investment. This week we're on show X4, and we're going to talk about some type of pair trading. And what we mean by pair trading is a large Chinese name compared to the similar industry, similar business as a large Western firm. Before we get into that, though, there was a smattering of headlines this week about China being investable only for Chinese. This is really a thesis that peng.guo and I have been talking about since we started this channel. If you have to invest in China, you must invest in mainland stocks traded on the mainland. We've talked at length about how to do that more efficiently, specifically through asset allocation. But today, we're making some comparisons with these biggest names in China and the biggest names in the Western markets. We've also talked about some of these names in the past. But a big disclaimer up front, China's economy is not like the US. In the US, the biggest names tend to be global service companies, whereas a number of the biggest Chinese names are still large state-run enterprises. But don't worry, we're going to try to make some legitimate comparisons. And first up, peng.guo is our favorite, Maotai.
Yeah, number one.
It's the biggest name on the mainland. But if you wanted to compare Maotai, you might choose a name like Diageo. While Maotai sells the famous baijiu that carries their eponymous name, Diageo has a number of global brands that are instantly recognizable, like Johnnie Walker, Smirnoff, and Guinness. So let's look at the comparison. Over the past 5 years, the largest name traded in the largest index in China, Maotai, is up 154% compared to Diageo, which is up 30%. I mean, peng.guo, we've talked about Maotai. Is there anything you want to add on this?
Maotai is always a single blue chip company. So, and a lot of the institution hold this stock for long term, and tons of the research about that. But also is could be affected by the government policy, because while the government controls the spendings, it will affect the Maotai profit. So it's really tied to the micro economy in China.
Yeah, there was some number of years ago where you weren't allowed to drink baijiu or Maotai at any parties or anything like that. But that hasn't really changed, but it hasn't really affected the stock price. It did affect the stock price, when this was first implemented. But as you can see, last 5 years, it's up a rip-roaring 154%.
But don't forget, the Maotai has a Maotai ice cream. They put a little bit of wine into the ice cream. So that's the innovation.
That it is an innovation. I don't know if the taste is what you want. Okay, so let's keep moving. The next up is CATL. Viewers of this show know CATL is a huge performer, big battery maker. The US doesn't really have a great competitor. There is a big company called East Penn Manufacturing, but that's a private company. But if you look to Japan, there is Panasonic, which has a tracker in the US, and that might be a closer comparison. And if you're thinking we've confused batteries for your television remote with batteries that go in automobiles, know that Panasonic is one of the largest suppliers of Tesla and Lucid. So we've mentioned CATL is up a massive 642%. Panasonic is unfortunately down 14%. So we're keeping score here. And we're going to give you the results of these top 7 names. And it was a random note that we took 7. I didn't want to bore everybody with taking 10. So peng.guo, CATL, everybody knows this is a wild performer. But there are other big names that do this kind of business in China as well. The third by market cap is a name that people should be familiar with also, which is Ping An. Ping An is an insurance and banking mammoth. On the insurance side, maybe the best example is UNH. A lot of health insurance, and it's been a great performer over the last 5 years. Ping An is actually down 11%, which was a little bit shocking to me, and UNH is up 106%. I mean, Ping An is really a financial services conglomerate. We don't have any of those anymore in the US, but I think UNH was the better comparison. What's your thoughts, peng.guo?
Yeah, I think that should be good. But Ping An definitely is like the financial group. So it's covered a lot of business. Yeah, but I'm surprised to see the UNH is up almost 100%. So that's a great deal.
Yeah. So we're staying with financial services. The fourth largest on the mainland is China Merchants Bank, and we've compared that with JP Morgan. In a previous show, we compared like a 20-year chart, but we're just looking at 5 years here. Over the last 5 years, JP Morgan's up 31%, and China Merchants Bank similarly up 27%. I do think China Merchants Bank has a huge runway in China. I do know the brand is really preferred for wealth management people, and they're a very trusted brand on the mainland. Next up is Midea. It's a small appliance maker and smart technology manufacturer. Not a lot of great comparisons since GE stopped making or stopped selling or sold their appliance making business, but a good proxy might be Hewlett Packard, which makes things that every home now has, which is computers, printers, and periphery ancillary devices. Symbol HPQ was up 26% versus Midea, which was only up 6% over the past 5 years. It may not be an obvious comparison, peng.guo, but these are really consumer electronics now, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That is the most competitive market in China.
Yeah. The sixth largest name is an interesting one in China, which is BYD. The obvious comparison is Tesla. And over the last 5 years, Tesla was up a massive 750%, and BYD was up a slightly less massive 420%. So those are huge returns for these two companies. You didn't do anything wrong if you bought either place. I mean, interesting, Warren Buffett sold a big chunk of his BYD recently, but I don't think that's a reflection of anything other than his asset allocation model.
Yeah, definitely the BYD and the Tesla are the hottest names in the market.
Yeah.
And including the new models. Everybody is talking about that and think about their plan to doing that. It's surprisingly, I'm pretty sure there's a progress of this new energy car. They will completely replace the gas-based cars. So they have a lot of the new innovation, which is make the cost. It's very, very competitive. It's much better than the gas-based car.
Finally, the seventh name is China Yangtze Power. And we're going to compare that with New Era Energy, which is really a large southern-based utility provider. They're up 37 and 84% respectively. So big performance on those. So if we look at all of these, we'll just throw up a chart here and look at the 5-year return. This is not annualized. This is just total return over the past 5 years for each of these names. You can see there's a ton of volatility. You have on the China side, Ping An was down 11% and CATL was up 642%. For the quote unquote Western or more mature, however you want to label these, Panasonic down 14, Tesla up 750. But the average is what's interesting to me because the average for China, for these Chinese names are up 182%. The Western/foreign names are up 144%. I think the most interesting piece here, peng.guo, and this is sort of where we're going, the S&P 500 was up 56%. So this little portfolio up 144 versus 56, and the CSI was up a meager 1.25. And this top 7 names in the CSI 300 was up 182%. So a lot of that is self-fulfilling, right? The bigger names take on a bigger place in the index, but that's a massive performance. What are your thoughts over the 5 years, peng.guo?
That's typically called the 80% or 20% rule. Right now, maybe the 90% or 10% of the rule. This is why we're always interested in the leading company in each industry, each sector.
A piece of this is going to change going forward, whereas some of the China tech firms will have those A share listings because, if you look at this list, there's no Tencent, there's no Alibaba, there's no, Baidu, there's no Pinduoduo, there's no JD. None of these names appear because they are not listed on the mainland. And similarly, we didn't take any of the Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Google names from the US either. So a lot of those names are not included because they're not listed in the CSI 300, not listed on the mainland. So the comp is not valid. But pretty shocking to me that some of these names, like United Healthcare, are very shocking. I think the energy provider, up Next Era Energy up 84% in 5 years. United Healthcare, these are massive gains for what wouldn't be considered growth companies. So we're going to leave it there for show X4. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you got some perspective on these large names listed in different places.
Thank you.